Be Hero presents Sheroes.
Hi everyone, Alicia here,
And Amy.
and we are asking the so-called heroes to step aside for a moment so that we can give the sheroes their turn in the spotlight.
Yes, you heard right. Welcome to Sheroes, a podcast by Be Hero Media.
So just sit back because it's time for the real game changers to show you how it's done. Some of you may know that there was a really popular car race over the weekend, the Indy 500, and we wanted to briefly tell you about a mostly women racing team. 4 out of the 7 pit crew members were female, as well as 2 spotters, 2 engineers, and every front office role at Paretta Autosport. The team owner, Beth, said, "It's important to me that the bigger message isn't women at the expense of men." Her vision was to create a co-ed racing team, and she accomplished this vision. She also said, "My hope is that in 5 years, us being a team of mostly women is the least interesting thing about us." If you're wanting to know more about this team, I found this information on ESPN.com, the Indy 500, the women of Paretta Autosport.
Since it was Memorial Day on Monday, we thought it would be appropriate to talk about a fallen shero. We found one from the Civil War who seems really cool. Her name was Emily. She is from Brooklyn, New York, and she died at the Battle of Chattanooga.
Do we know what her last name is?
I'm sure someone does, but I've been researching and have been unable to find it. Any history buffs on here who know the answer, please reach out so we can let everyone know in a follow-up episode. So Alicia, who is she?
In early 1863, having recently gotten out of school at the ripe young age of 19, she had this idea that she needed to be an American Joan of Arc. Her parents thought it was a daydream, until it became apparent that it wasn't. All means that could be thought of were employed to keep her from running off to war. They had her classmates, a physician, a preacher, her single, probably cool aunt, try to talk some sense into her and prevent her from running off to war, and it eventually included depriving her of some liberties.
In a moment that is surely cinematic worthy,
Hollywood, where are you at? Are you listening? Where's our movie about Emily?
she escapes from her aunt's home, disguises herself as a boy, and joined the Union Army in the drum corps of a Michigan regiment.
From what I can tell, drummers tended to be younger. I found a story of a boy that was 9. He ran away to join the army.
Do you think she told them she was younger and used that as part of her disguise?
I don't know if this is reality or not, but I feel like in cinema, when girls try to disguise themselves as boys, they always say they're younger than they actually are. She was 19, but she could have probably gotten away with telling them she was 16. Or depending on how young she looked, she may have even been able to get away with saying she was 14.
She might have been able to get away with saying she was younger, but while young boys did join the army, I think it was technically illegal, so maybe just 18.
But if that were the case, how did a 9-year-old join? I can't imagine a 9-year-old being able to get away with saying they were 18.
I don't know. All I can say is, I just don't know. The drummers were often zealous, underaged patriots participating in war efforts without direct engagement in combat, and they didn't carry weapons. They were often in the rear when the fighting began, but being so close to the battle, casualties can and do happen. Aside from keeping the marching time, they performed other roles. The drums, like the trumpets, were used for communication. They learned various drum calls that would give out orders to the soldiers. To soldiers on the field of battle, their drum beats could either inspire patriotism or fear. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why Emily chose to become a drummer. I don't think she wanted to engage in battle. She just wanted to inspire courage and help lead her cause, the Union cause, to victory.
They also often helped the medical personnel. It is possible that she could have helped with amputations or other medical tasks. Some of them could be a bit gruesome, like carrying away amputated limbs. I'm glad that we aren't Emily.
Yeah.
So what do you think her code name was?
Her code name?
You know, what name did she give herself when she enlisted as a boy? She had to have one. Do you think it was...
John Smith?
Don't you think that's a little too classic? You might as well say, hey, I ran away from home to join the army.
What else? What do you think?
I think she might have gone by, I don't know, Ernest. Maybe Ernest
Smith.
Smith.
Gotta keep the Smith in there somewhere, right?
Do you think any of the men in her regiment knew that she was female?
I don't know. I'm inclined to say no.
So you don't think any of them noticed anything was different about their comrade?
Well, I think imagining that they were in a war with a lot of stuff going on around them, they probably weren't thinking about, well, my comrade's a little different. Do you think she actually participated in the battle?
Well, if she was a drummer, she likely wouldn't have been actively participating, but many of the drummers did move on to become soldiers. With her wanting to be something of an American Joan of Arc, I'm inclined to say she probably stuck with being a drummer, although it's been a while since I've studied up on Joan of Arc, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe Joan was actually actively fighting, and I suspect the same can be said of our Emily.
Yeah, it's been several years since I've last studied up on Joan of Arc, but I think you're right. I don't believe she actively participated in battle. Finding information about Emily was very difficult. In addition to reading about her in the book we used as the primary source for this particular episode, we also tried to understand her better by doing some research on the drummers in the Civil War. We also looked up a couple of the battles that we believe she was in, and looked up Van Cleve since her regiment was in his division, and we also looked up General Rosecrans.
In piecing together the information in the book with the information we could find online, we wanted to share the battles we believe she was in and the experiences she might have had.
So at the end of 1862 and the start of 1863, the leader of the Union Army, General Rosecrans...
Wow, you're really struggling to get that out.
Tell me about it.
That's almost like me and Bo last week.
Yeah, it is.
And I can't even make a pun out of it.
Well, moving back to our original topic, the leader of the Confederate Army, General Bragg, fought a bloody battle in the Cumberland Mountains. From what I could find, it was called the Battle of Stones River. Depending on the sources you look at, it was either an indecisive victory or it was a victory for the Union Army. Early on in the battle, one Confederate general attacked the Union supply trains and succeeded in destroying or carrying off nearly $1 million of supplies and took 800 prisoners. The following day, both General Bragg and General Rosecrans spent the day organizing their troops for the next battle. General Rosecrans devised a strategy to trick General Bragg by creating and maintaining a spirited skirmish line against the Confederate positions. While this strategy worked, he did not anticipate the ferocity with which the Confederates would fight. It was so ferocious that it was nearly a Confederate victory. In what should have been a decisive victory, General Bragg called for Breckinridge to send 2 brigades to Hardee for the final thrust. But Breckinridge was under the impression that he was about to be attacked by General Horatio Van Cleve. Our Emily was in Van Cleve's troops, and so in some small way, she would have been a part of this significant time of the battle.
In reality, Van Cleve's troops had been sent elsewhere to support the Union's threatened flank. If not for this misunderstanding by Breckinridge, the battle would have been very likely a Confederate victory. When he realized that he was mistaken, it had already been a sufficient delay to allow the Union Army to fight back.
Another critical moment in the battle was at the Round Forest salient. The Confederates found that the Round Forest salient was the key to the entire Union position. Knowing this, they fought with renewed ferocity, but the Union soldiers did too. They held firm for 8 hours against the unrelenting Confederate army. As the Union army began to falter, General Rosecrans and his staff rode forward to rally them, and ultimately the Union Army won the battle. There were a few more critical moments in this battle, but these were some of the key events that I wanted to share during the course of that battle.
In the latter half of 1863, after a string of losses on the Confederate side, the Confederate Army gathered its troops to the Chickamauga Creek to take back Chattanooga. Of the 3 battles that we mention, this battle is one that I am confident that our Emily would have been in. Since we know she died at Chattanooga, and from what I understand, the Battle of Chickamauga could have also been called a battle at Chattanooga.
On September 18th, both sides assembled their troops, the Confederates hoping to surprise the Union Army, but the Union Army seeing and anticipating what the Confederates are about to do, and planning accordingly.
On September 19th, they began the battle. Throughout the day, the Confederates gain ground, but are unable to break the Union line. Late that evening, the Confederates receive fresh troops from the battle the following day.
On September 20th, during the battle, the Union General Rosecrans believed that a gap existed and sent General Thomas Wood to fill it. However, there was no gap in the line, and when General Wood's divisions moved to fill the imagined gap, it created a gap where they were and allowed the Confederates to break the line. This ultimately caused chaos, but one Union general, George Thomas, took command of the scattered Union Army and formed a defensive position. The Confederates continued to attack in earnest, but they were unable to break the line again.
The following day, they do not meet again in battle, and instead the Union Army opts to hold Chattanooga. The Confederate Army lays siege to the town, preventing all supplies from getting in or out.
In the months following the Battle of Chickamauga, General Rosecrans planned to retreat from Chattanooga. Upon learning of this, General Ulysses S. Grant removed him from his position and replaced him with General George Thomas, who had taken command of the scattered troops and held the defensive position in the battle at Chickamauga. He commands General Thomas not to retreat from Chattanooga. General Thomas says, "We will hold the town until we starve." This became a critical time to get supplies to the starving Union Army, and taking the counsel of the chief engineer of the army, William Baldy Smith, the Union Army seized Brown's Ferry on October 27th, which made it easier to send supplies to the Army of Cumberland that was stuck in Chattanooga. This supply line was dubbed the Cracker Line.
On November 23rd, General Bragg withdraws some troops to reinforce the Confederate Army in Tennessee. General Grant sends an army of 14,000 troops to stop the withdrawing 600 Confederate troops. The Confederates are quickly overrun by the Union Army.
On November 24th, the Union Army engages the Confederate Army in battle and drive them back with their superior numbers. The Confederate Army withdraws from Lookout Mountain to reinforce Missionary Ridge.
There was supposed to be a second Union Army at Missionary Ridge, but due to a miscommunication, the Union troops were not on the ridge that day to drive the Confederates back.
On November 25th, General Grant sends General Hooker to Missionary Ridge. He engages them at the southernmost point, Rossville Gap. His troops are successful in surrounding the Confederate troops. Another Union army battling at the same time at Tunnel Hill are routed by the Confederate army. So General Grant sends a third army to draw the Confederate attention away from the troops at Tunnel Hill, and this army charges, swarms the ridge, and overwhelms the Confederate army. With no reserves left, the Confederate army flees, and the Union army ultimately wins.
We debated the best way to present this episode, and we felt that giving some descriptions of the battles that she likely participated in would help give a little more detail into her life without directly reading her story from the book that we got her information from.
In the first day of the Battle of Chattanooga, her regiment participated in a tough battle where she emerged unharmed. The battle the next day, she was not so lucky. Standing fearlessly under deadly fire,
it was discovered that she was a girl when a mini ball got her in the side and she was taken to the surgeon's tent for examination.
What's a mini ball?
I don't know. I took that word directly from the source.
Any war history buffs or ammunitions experts, feel free to give us a definition in the comments.
So back to what I was saying, a mini ball got her in the side and she was taken to the surgeon's tent for examination. This injury turned out to be fatal. Without going into too many details or directly quoting the source that we mentioned, she was convinced to confess who she really was. As she was dying, she had a telegram sent to her father asking forgiveness and saying that she expected to deliver her country, but the fates would not have it so. I do find it interesting that she asks forgiveness. There's not really a lot of details there, so I'm not sure if she's asking forgiveness for running away. It's not really very clear, but I mean, I feel like, I don't know, I guess I can't really relate to that.
Yeah, I wonder if that's something more that you would understand if we were from that era, we might understand why she asked for forgiveness. While she did not become famous for leading the Union Army to victory, and while she may not have been the most important person fighting in the war, I think she made an impact of the lives of the people that she interacted with, and she deserves to be recognized. I think that she is very similar to Natasha that we talked about last week. It would be easy to write her off as not important, but she fought for what she believed in, and because so many people did fight for what they believed in at that time, in the Union Army, they won the war and slavery was abolished in the United States. We wanted to take this moment to thank her and all the soldiers who have fought for our precious freedoms. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Our main source of information for this episode it's called Women of War, Their Heroism and Self-Sacrifice. It's by Frank Moore. It was published in 1866, which was 3 years after the battle that Emily died in.
And Emily died 2 years before the end of the Civil War.
Other sources we used in the episode were The Role of Drummer Boys in American Civil War by Robert McNamara, updated on June 26th, 2019.
And then there were several websites that we used as sources for learning about the battles. 3 of them were from the website battlefields.org. One was for Chattanooga, another one was 10 Battle Facts for Chattanooga, and another was Bragg versus Rosecrans. Actually, sorry, there were 4 for that. The 4th one was Chickamauga. We also looked at Britannica.com to get a little bit more information about William S. Rosecrans.
Thanks for listening to our episode today. If you liked this episode, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share.
And to women and girls the world over,
Be brave.